We are back. Yes, it's your host, Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 282, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Summit Adjusters, Jim Stout Street, and featured, of course, on HockeyHotStove.com. If you go to HockeyHotStove.com and scroll down, you'll see the O&B insignia. And you can click on that. We'll link you to all of our YouTube shows. And of course, we are live streaming tonight on YouTube. And if you could subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell, you'll know every time a new O&B Puckcast is up for you to watch live. And of course, you can always go there after the show and check it out and put it on high speed and cover up my face, whatever you want. But as long as you give us a like, a subscribe, and hit that notification bell, that would be great. It tickles the algorithm. We get more exposure. It really helps us out. So, of course, we're live streaming tonight on YouTube, Facebook, also on X. And we have a big show. We have a WJC preview, and we're going to talk a little bit about a big trade went down, or trades that went down in the NHL this week, and talk a little bit about our Philadelphia Flyers. They went 1-0-3 since our last show. They are now 16-9-6 for 38 points through 31 games. They are in the first wild card spot ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins, but they have the least number of regulation wins in the conference, and they have a lot of road games ahead. So we shall see if the Flyers can stick it out. Let's go to our panel. Chef B, what is on your mind tonight?
Well, you got the World Championships coming up. It's going to be fun. It's going to be some, and truth be told, there might be like 5 or 6 Flyers going to be able to participate somewhere around that night. I guess so we don't have a set number yet, but it's going to be very fun to watch because this is there's a lot of good countries and that have a lot of prospects, higher end prospects, and so it should be very entertaining to watch. Can't look forward to it. Plus, can I do it? Can I do it? The return of the great Dan Silver is what I'm looking forward to as well. So, yes.
The great Dan Silver joins us. We did not expect it. We expected to have Anthony DeMarco from DailyFaceoff.com. He had something come up with Daily Faceoff, but we get Dan Silver, who we did not expect. So I think it's a close to an even trade. I hope that people
Christmas miracle.
Either way, welcome back.
1 for 1. It's amazing how that works out. Chef, thank you. I'm glad to be back on with you guys. We got a good show. I was yesterday I had a flight from Vegas to DC. It was supposed to leave at 1 in the afternoon, and it ended up leaving at 7 at night. It was crazy. I got to DC at like 3 a.m. Not an ideal schedule. Up early, and I'm still running on adrenaline, so I'm ready to talk some hockey.
Awesome.
You got it. Let's not delay our guest, Anthony Donati, the Prospect on on X. You can follow also at Draft Pro Hockey on X. Check out the YouTube page. Anthony, welcome back to the O&B Puckcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to talk hockey. There's so much right now. World Junior Championship is coming up. I mean, Flyers had the best draft that I think in the 2025 draft class, that out of all the guys that I liked, their second round was awesome. So just happy to talk a bunch of Flyers and World Junior stuff.
You got it. So let's talk about the WJC. We will get to the Flyers. We'll talk about Quinn Hughes. We might even mention the goalie swap between Pittsburgh and Edmonton. But I think this tournament, we don't get the access to the kind of people that know these prospects like you do at often in combination with Dan. And it's a nice, trade-off between you two. So I wanted to take advantage of that. So for people who are new to the tournament, who are getting into the Flyers now that they're getting better, and some of our other teams are falling off a little bit maybe, tell us a little bit about the tournament itself and who are the favorite teams, and maybe mention, some of the players that are really highlighted here.
Well, it's a mixture of really incredible 2025 draft picks, like a Porter Martone, who is, in one of my favorite prospects in that entire class. He was top 3 in my list, like a Caleb Desnoyers, who also was top 5. And then you got guys like a Gavin McKenna, a mixture of Keaton Verhoff, Ivar Stenberg, who I just want to touch on a little bit because, he's putting up numbers that no 18-year-old has ever put up in the SHL. And actually his numbers are on par to beat Daniel Sedin's, or a 1999 draft pick to the Canucks, and the Canucks obviously traded Quinn Hughes, so they are right now the top odds for that top projected pick for the odds of 25.5%. So could history repeat itself there by picking the SHL top point scorer for both of those drafts? But there's just so many incredible talents. I think Sweden, Canada, and Team USA can't be counted out because of what they're doing internationally. The NTDP team has had its rough start in the USHL. They are, I still believe, last in the East. I know they were 10 points down in the East at one point, but then when you're watching them play in the CHL USA prospect game, even Holinka, which they took home gold, they are somehow beating Canada's super teams. On paper, we had Keaton Verhoff, Tynan Lawrence, who could be the number one pick. He was Corey Pronman's number one placement on his list, putting Gavin McKenna fourth, which was kind of shocking. But you have a lot of great players and a lot of great talents. I think this is one of those drafts where everybody's up in the air. It could be another James Haggins situation where James Haggins was the top pick off of the board for summer scouting, and a little bit after that going into the new year. And then you had a guy like Matthew Schaefer come into this tournament, play incredibly well, broke his collarbone obviously, but he solidified himself in that game in 4 minutes as the number one draft pick. So this is one of those drafts where we are going to take a lot from the World Junior Championships, I believe, than previous years, because this is just Gavin McKenna hasn't had that Gavin McKenna generational moment yet. And maybe being in the NCAA, it's going to help him elevate his game for a tournament like this. But this can certainly push him to be the number one player as well as a couple other guys. So it's a very enticing tournament. There's just so much to look forward to right now, and especially for, I guess, Canada, USA, Sweden, even Finland has a really good team. So it's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Dan, just wanted to get some of your thoughts coming into this tournament.
Yeah, it's always one of my favorite tournaments of the year. Over the holidays, get to watch the games. We got rid of cable, so I may have to get like a 1 month Fubo subscription because I have YouTube TV, and unfortunately they don't have NHL Network, which is like one of the craziest things to me. So might have to get like the 1 month subscription. Sometimes they have specials where you can get it for like $5 or something. But Canada, I think obviously is going to be the highlight watching for Flyers fans with Jet Lachenko and Porter Martone on that squad. And I think they're going to be, and Anthony can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're going to probably be the overwhelming favorite to win gold when you look at the guys who are on Canada and the NHL experience that they bring in. I mean, you've got guys like Lachenko's played in the NHL. Brady Martin had a little bit of NHL time. Michael Misa had some NHL time. Their defensemen are just really spectacular. When you've got Zane Parekh, Harrison Brunick, who I thought was pretty good for the Penguins in a limited trial earlier this year, combined with some guys some really good goalies also. But for Flyers fans, it's really going to be fun to see Martone and Lachenko. Heck, maybe they'll be playing on the same line. But I think Canada will be a big favorite in this tournament. The USA has got a good roster as usual. I'm not sure it's on the level that Canada is, and Sweden, Finland, they've always got good teams that they bring to it. So it should be a lot of fun. Should be great to watch Martone. Lachenko's been good since the trade to Brampton, so I think it'll be fun. And here's Nadia Konmanich entering the chat. So she's excited for the World Juniors also.
Yeah. So Ed, I just wanted to follow up with, would it be an upset if a team other than US, Canada, or Sweden won? Or does Finland really have a chance?
To me, it's Canada, and then a big teardrop, and then Sweden. But I could totally see a scenario where Sweden wins. I couldn't really see another team winning. I know that USA has really great, James Haggins is really good, and they have some good talent, but they just don't have the type of depth that it would be a shocker if they won. I think a lot of people would rethink this draft if they won. I think a lot of people would rethink a lot of things just because, Sweden has so much SHL experience. It's kind of like Canada with the NHL experience, you're playing against men in that league. And I mean, they're bringing Anton Frandel, they're bringing, Vigo Bjork, who I really like. Ivar Stenberg is going to be there. Victor Eklund, Milton Gastrin is playing against, some really great talent over there. So you have a really good forward group. The only question mark kind of is defensively, where Canada just has that edge over everybody. Their goalies, I also think Canada has 3 of the top goalies too. When you're looking at, Carter George probably being the worst of them, that just shows you how much depth they have. I'm a big Jack Ivankovic guy. I got to talk to him last year. He's very, very talented, cool, calm, and collective. He was 5'11". Then you have a 6'5" goaltender in Joshua Ravensbergen, who's obviously a Sharks draft pick. So you have both of those. I think, Jack Ivankovic could come into the tournament and give them a like Adam Guyan type of like tournament feeling, where you get a guy that's kind of not like the top of his class, and then you get him in there and he's a playoff goalie. Like, I think Adam Guyan is more of that playoff goalie where you saw him in the NCAA, where he didn't really have that a very great season, or the BCHL or wherever, he isn't that great until you get him on an international stage. Like, Jack Ivankovic is great. Plus, when you get him on the international stage, he's even better. So I feel like you're getting to Canada, and it's by far and away the best team. Like, it's going to be so hard to push them out of gold.
Yeah. So I guess the typical Flyers fan is saying, okay, yeah, that's nice. I watch the tournament. The games are fun, and I kind of get into it. But I'm mainly watching it because I want to see what Porter Martone looks like now that he's been in college. He's stronger. It looks like he's faster. His pace is picked up. These are all criticisms of the player, knowing that he easily could improve those by applying himself. Now we're going to see him against the creme de la creme internationally. So I think that's the biggest anticipation. And then Lutsenko to see if he's shooting more or shooting at all.
I think the thing about Porter Martone is we kind of got a lot of the answers to the questions even before the draft. When he was playing with the men internationally and he was on, Crosby and Celebrini's wing, I just felt like that showed how much of a special talent Porter Martone was. I mean, he was always top 3 in my rankings, but this guy is one of those players that when you're with other skilled players, he's going to elevate his performance. Playing in the NCAA, his size, you can see his size. Like, he's one of those players that he's not going to be physically demanding, but his body is going to allow him to get wherever he wants. And when he does get hit, he's going to be able to, absorb the hit, make a play. His shot is just fantastic. I think he's one of the best puck handlers and has great vision. I think he's going to put up a lot of points only because he's just so skilled. So Porter Martone is one of my favorite players in this tournament, and I think Flyers fans are going to be very excited. The same with Jet Lutsenko.
All right. I would like to throw something in here, a quick question. I last showing on the international scene, Heikki Rehonen, he, I hope I did justice there. You know me with the names. He had a good showing, and he was actually playing up on the top 2 lines for most of most of the tournament, the last one he was in. Now he's at Harvard, and have you seen any of him, and what can we realistically expect out of him? I mean, the Flyers got a logjam now of a lot of these second center prospects. Is he more a true third center, or is he have that second center potential too? Because as the way they were using him last year, he got a decent amount of first line center minutes.
Well, in the NHL, I think he would definitely be a third line, because even I would be interested to see, because Jet Lutsenko is going to be one of those Jack Nesbitt. If you're locking in your top 2 centers, I just don't see how he could overtake both of those, because I really do like those guys' potentials, and I do think if they're both going to swap 1C, 2C, and then you have some other guys there. That's like, I could totally see a scenario where he gets pushed to the third. And I think that this is a guy that you kind of want in your lineup when he's a really good two-way player. I think that he can lock down a 1C, kind of similar to like in this, like a Tynan Lawrence, he can do exactly that. His coaches call him like immaculate celebrity. I think that like he's a lower end talent and skill, but defensively, he's a great player. So I feel like the Flyers just have too many great prospects right now. It's a great problem to have too.
Yeah.
They just have really great prospects. And the last time I was here, they traded for Trevor Zegras, and that's also a guy that I do like better on the wing, in my honest opinion. I think that if you allow him to use his offense and not really have to focus mainly on the defensive side as well, he could kind of cook a little bit more. You could see his hands, but you have kind of a logjam at center. So I would be surprised if he was a 2C or a 1C on the Flyers in the future.
Now, is he basically, if you're looking down the line in years, he's probably 2-3 years away, maybe. Is he the replacement for Noah Cates?
I don't necessarily think he's the replacement, just because it's so far down the line. I think that the Flyers probably are going to fill that hole quicker, but I also think that Nesbitt is probably going to slide in as the 3C to start his career with the Flyers, and that's probably the replacement. I think that the Flyers are going to try to get a 1C, 2C, but Nesbitt can grow to that 1C, 2C with his potential. He's just kind of farther away because, this is a guy that plays pretty heavy old school style, but at the same time, he's got a lot of rawness to his game still, and that's the exciting part about Nesbitt. So I think that, it's not that he's the replacement to Cates, but I think that Cates is probably not the future in that squad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even Ronan, it could end up being a winger anyway. A lot of guys that can make it at center in the European leagues end up on the wing, and the Flyers have Jack Berglund, and we think that Heike is going to end up on the Finnish squad. It's not official yet, but we're also very sure that if he doesn't hurt his hand like he did last year, Jack Berglund will play for Sweden. And I think, there's a guy who looks like he also could be a 3C candidate. What say you?
Yeah, I think that even in the comments, like, he has a very good upside. I really do like Berglund in terms of NHL potential, like his floor. I think that it's probably a little higher than a guy like Ronan, but what Ronan did in the USHL was pretty dominant compared to doing that in the CHL. He would have got like 70, 80 points because the USHL is more physically dominant, wear and tear wise. It's harder to score. It's more chippy. It's just a harder play. It helps you go from the USHL to the NCAA rather than the CHL to the NCAA a little more. You're seeing with that, like a guy with Adam Valentini, and like a Shilov went there, didn't really put up he put like a 0.68 points per game. Now he's at the CHL putting up really, really great numbers. Chase Reed didn't even have a point. So I feel like I just wanted to touch on that. Like, putting up points in the USHL is a lot harder than a lot of people seem to think. That's why Tynan Lawrence is heavily rated as he is, like 13 points in 7 games. Like, that's absurd for a guy that just got hurt. So when you're looking at Berglund as well, like, this is also like Flyers have a lot of the same thing where it's like, Shane Malloy hates this term, but like middle 6 players. Who is going to be that guy that steps up to solidify himself as that top 6 guy or that top line player? Because you have a lot of the exact same things, which is a good thing to have. So I think that at the same time, like, the Flyers are building the right way where it's depth while also drafting stars. And Porter Martone, Matvei Michkov is one of my favorite players I ever got to scout in terms of the offensive ability, the offensive skill set. Jet Luchenko is probably, in my opinion, when he's playing with the Bulldogs, like, he doesn't have to be relied on as much. And you're seeing that with the way that he's playing, like, very highly skilled player. I think that the two-way game is going to continue to show up. And, that's a guy that I could place on the second line, in my opinion. Jack Nesbitt could be placed anywhere in the lineup. He's just that do-it-all kind of guy, too. Even if he's a top-line player, he's going to be a contributor to two more stars. So I feel like you guys are drafting the right people. It's just a lot of the same thing in terms of that, and see who hits better than what is estimated. And I feel like that's a good way to draft. Like even Shane Van Sage, you could play him. He's a weapon. You could play him as a bottom six player, but he's going to physically wear you down in a way where Porter Martone is not going to be able to, but Porter Martone is going to be playing on that top six. So Van Sage is going to be such a valuable player, but he might be put on the like third or fourth line. But during a playoff series, you're not going to want to play that guy 7 games.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
and Dan, he's one of your favorite players.
Yeah, Van Sage's a guy on Team USA who I think will be playing a decent role. And look, there's still some chance that he can develop into like a Tom Wilson type guy where he finds a scoring touch as he gets older. But as Anthony mentioned, like his floor is very good fourth line NHL banger, like a Garnet Hathaway, right? So that's sort of his floor. And then he's got a lot of upside too. So that's one of the reasons that I really like Van Sage is there's not a lot of concern there. It's just what kind of upside is there, and you never know with how these kids are going to develop. He definitely has more skill than a lot of guys that you would say, hey, that's a fourth line player. As Anthony also mentioned a good point, which is that the Flyers have so many of these types of similar players, middle six types of players, and we'll get into the Quinn Hughes trade later tonight, but they are going to have to figure out a way to move some of these wingers and parlay them into a return that could either become a first line center or a top pairing defenseman. So that's really going to be the key for Danny Briere moving forward. And that's going to be the key to seeing how far this team can go, because we see things like the New York Islanders, all of a sudden they look like a terrific team. They got lucky. They got Matthew Schaefer. They also drafted Kashawn Atchison, who looks like he's going to be a really good defenseman. So Flyers have to be careful. I mean, the Sharks get Celebrini. I mean, the Blackhawks. It's going to be hard not to get leapfrogged by these guys. And I know that we're trying to build it the right way with the mentality from the room out, but there's also going to have to be some superstars that find their way here. And maybe Martone becomes one of those guys. We'll talk about Mishkov a little later and some of the struggles, but the key is going to be what Danny Briere can do with the wing glut to try and figure out a way to get some of these really top tier players here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing that, is definitely a point of discussion for them. One other player before we kind of get into the meat of that discussion, because I think that's where the rubber meets the road this week. If there's a headline story that's on the mind of the Flyers fans, it's not that they've lost 3 in a row, because they got points in 3 games and they played 2 teams that could be in the Stanley Cup final for all we know. Okay, we're not happy about it. We'll get into that. But, Max Westergaard has a chance to make Team Finland, because apparently Buffalo, under their old general manager, Buffalo replaces Kevin Adams with Jarmo Kekalainen. In case you haven't heard that news, that just happened today. So maybe it'll change. But Konsta Helenius, that other player that the Flyers might have drafted instead of Jet Lachenko, not just Steve Boyum, apparently they want to keep him in Rochester, and they don't want him at the WJC. That may open up a spot for Max Westergaard. And Don, Anthony, I just wanted to get your opinion about this player. It gives you a bit of an offensive flash, and his numbers are pretty impressive so far.
Yeah, and this is a guy that also plays well internationally. I believe like 8 points in 10 games. And it's just one of those guys that he was playing on Finland's second line internationally. Like, this is a guy that I think already should have been on here. Konstas Helenius obviously is one of those top players on Finland, and he's going to like replace that role too. But this is a guy that could, when he's on the top 6, he's a very talented player. I think that the only thing is, can he survive on a fourth line if need be, because the Flyers have so many prospects. Like that will remain to be seen. But playing in the SHL, you had a little of a tough time. But the thing is, you're playing against men too, so very skilled player. I think that this is a guy that his motor is awesome and his speed is fantastic. So, he's very explosive. I really like his skating style. I think that, his edge work is pretty good too. So I like this guy internationally when you're playing. I think that he should be a lock in the team. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Konstas Helenius, because that's just kind of an interesting thing that happened today when, his management got fired. But yeah, I do think that he's a guy that has a lot of flashes and should be on a team like this. Very exciting player, good 5th round draft pick by the Flyers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see. That would be interesting to watch him if his speed and offensive acumen show up in a tournament with a lot of elite talent. So at the end of the day, it sounds like you really expect the Canadians to capture the WJC and break the streak of the USA.
I would be shocked if it didn't happen. And if it didn't happen, I think that there needs to be more discussion on Ivar Stenberg being the number 1 pick, because I feel like Sweden would be the one that took it.
So you think you're going with Canada, Sweden, USA, or Finland, maybe?
I feel like it's Canada or Sweden, and then like just a St. Louis Cardinals type of run to win the World Series, like for it to happen, or like St. Louis Blues, any of those St. Louis teams that win a championship, like they somehow just do it. That's USA.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadian management has come under fire the last few years for building a team that a lot of people thought didn't have enough skill. Like they sort of passed over guys like Zane Parekh in the past. But you look at this year, they've got it this year, right? They've got Jake O'Brien, most likely, who's a very high skill player, who's not all that physical. Like that's the kind of guy in the past who maybe they wouldn't have had on the roster. They've got Zane Parekh. It's going to be on the roster. That's literally the guy who there was a lot of argument about last year. The goaltenders are fantastic. They pretty much have everything, this team. Though I guess the one thing they don't have, right? They don't have the McDavid or the Celebrini or the Crosby. Like they don't have that superstar. We'll see what Michael Misa can do. So that's kind of like the only thing that I feel like they're sort of lacking compared to like when you had like a Bedard and a Fantilli were on like well, I guess Fantilli was on. He was a Canadian, right? So he was. So those guys were on the same roster, right? You're kind of lacking in that, but like this Canadian team has absolutely no holes, and it's not like you mentioned Stenberg certainly on Sweden, but it's not like any of these other teams have like a superstar type of player.
I think Canada is hoping that Gavin McKenna is that Bedard type of player, but we just have not seen it in the NCAA level. Maybe if McKenna can bring that potential in Misa, or a guy like Keaton Verhoff, who is 6'4", like plays like a 4th line forward out there, 215 pounds, who's put up good stats in the NCAA. If either one of those guys takes over, like there's going to be a discussion around them as the number 1 pick. I know that McKenna's falling a little bit right now, but this is the exact tournament where you need him to step up and show why he's the number 1 pick. Either one of those guys.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this roster in the Wheeler article that we have linked in our show notes. This is as stacked a roster as I've seen, from the standpoint of what we can tell right now. Yeah, it's crazy.
We didn't even talk about Iginla or, Carter Bear, Cole Rezhny. Right. Like, that's just crazy.
My question, since you brought up Gavin McKenna, if he flops, how bad does that hurt him in the draft time? Because remember, everybody kept saying, a lot of teams out there and a lot of fans out there are hoping their team would tank and get McKenna, get just a shot at him. And a lot of teams held back their number 1 picks just in case. So if he flops, is he still? How much work does he have to do to make up for that? To be that, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that still believe in him, but I mean, visually, he hasn't been lighting it up. In fact, the people behind him have seemed to make a better career in juniors and in college.
I think it would be a mistake if he fell past 3. Like, I don't want this to be a Shane Wright situation where if he falls, he's going to fall to 4 for some reason. Like, this is a very talented guy. There's question marks on his 5-on-5 play, his defense, his B game, his A game, and like the puck on a stick. He's just a fantastic player, really good playmaker. But when you have a guy that's like a sub 170 pounds playing against 22 to 25-year-olds in the NCAA, when you only have that WHL experience where you're dominating everybody and you could potentially build those bad habits, it's very tough for a top player. I do not like when a player jumps from the CHL straight into the NCAA. It's a very big difference from going to the USHL, like what Adam Valentini did. And I know he got scrutinized from the OHL for the Kitchener Rangers thing. I do believe that when it's like Logan Hensler, he was playing against USHL talent, playing for the NTDP, very talented kid, went to Wisconsin, which probably wasn't the best fit for him, and fell in the draft. There's something to it to not jump in your draft year to the NCAA if you were 100% not ready for it. I think Gavin McKenna doing this is going to help him in the long term, but his draft stock might fall from this. It might suffer. I do believe that Gavin McKenna is a superstar player potential, but you got to work on a lot of things around the game. Like, his B game needs to get better. You need to add weight. I think that he is in a position that he should be top 3, but also you got guys where it's like Ivar Stenberg, Keaton Verhoff, and Tynan Lawrence, who are just putting up incredible numbers and are doing things we haven't really seen before at their either heights, level, or size, where it's like you have to push them down. So if Gavin McKenna was in a bad draft class, he would obviously be the number 1 pick right now, but he's not living up to that generational status that we give way too many players. So it kind of hurt him already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So I just want to finish up with a discussion about Martone. Like, is he displaying like the qualities that would put him in the same kind of conversation with one of the Tkachuk brothers?
If his last name was Tkachuk, like Porter Tkachuk, he would be in that range, but he doesn't have the meanness as a Corey Perry, which he said was one of his player comps when I asked him at the combine. He shows more skill than a Corey Perry, but it's just like, if you can get that meanness into your game, if you can realize like what you have in your body and your size, and then implement that into a playoff style player, which you can do internationally, and just take over, then you can. Like, this is a guy that has so much potential offensively that he is basically like a 5'10" forward that happens to be 6'3", very similar to a guy like Lyndon Lakovic, who got drafted by the Capitals 27th, like very tall, big size, but he doesn't play big. And I think that like notches him down a little bit, but you need to be that tall these days in the playoffs. And I feel like his size allows him to get wherever he needs to on the ice. And you put this guy on a power play with Michkov. It's just, they're 2 high IQ players that have that much offensive skill set. I want this guy in the NHL next year. I think he's going to put up big numbers. I just love everything about Porter Martone. I think he should have been Bedard's line mate for the next 10 to 15 years. Like, that's how good. So if I think that with Bedard, I think he could be that with Michkov, or Jack Nesbitt or Jet Luchenko, whoever steps up to be that 1 or 2C, I think should be next to Porter Martone, because he's just that smart. And this is a great tournament for him because he's surrounded by talent.
Gotcha. So, Dan, I just, this Hughes trade, and if you haven't heard, Quinn Hughes being traded essentially for Zeev Boyum, Marco Rossi, and first-round draft pick, and the other winger who
Liam
Liam Ogren, and Quinn Hughes goes to the Wild, and the Vancouver got a decent return, all things considered. What's your feeling about when you heard that, and maybe how you related that to what could the Flyers have done?
Well, most people's reaction was that it was a huge haul, right, for a guy who they have no assurances that he's going to re-sign. So they could only be getting him for a year and a half. Now, keep in mind, that let's say that we get to next year around this time and it doesn't look like Quinn Hughes is going to re-sign, well, they could trade him for probably 75% of the haul that they got for a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup. So, obviously they will look a lot better if he re-signs, but it's not the end of the world if he doesn't. They'll get a haul for him next year if they decide they want to do that. It was kind of a team out of the blue a little bit, because everyone assumed that he was either going to go to New Jersey because he wants to play with his brothers, or maybe he'd go to a team like the Flyers, where Rick Tocchet's got a history with him. It's close to where his brothers are, or maybe Detroit, right? Because he's from Michigan, so maybe that kind of could make a little bit of sense. But ultimately, Bill Guerin put together the best package. And I do want to say, though, that I don't think it's quite as spectacular a package as a lot of people might make you want to believe. So just going through the players, and I'm sure Anthony has some thoughts on it, but Zeev Buium clearly was the crown jewel in the trade, and he'll most likely anchor the Vancouver top power play unit for a long time to come. I think there is still some debate if his lack of skating ability is potentially going to prevent him from becoming like a Lane Hudson or a Cale Makar or a Quinn Hughes. Like I think that you watch him play and he's not as good a skater as those guys are. And even when you were watching the World Juniors last year, you could tell that like Cole Hudson is a better skater than him, right? And it's surprising that the Hudson brothers, neither of them were drafted like super, super early because they're just such great players. But Buium is not quite as good of a skater. And I was talking to one of my buddies who's a big Wild fan, and he does feel that like there is some potential that Buium does not get to where he needs to be because of that skating. Now, maybe he'll go out and improve it. He had 2 power play points in his first game for Vancouver. He's, his floor is, third pairing defenseman who just is great on the power play. He'll probably be a little bit more than that, but there's a little bit of bust potential there. Marco Rossi, I think we've sort of seen where he is. He's basically like a 2C or 3C. I don't think he's going to develop into a 1C probably. Liam Ogren, he's a middle 6 winger. Like, I think that his offense has not come along as much as a lot of people might have hoped. He was the captain of the Swedish World Junior team, I believe, a few years ago. Like, he's got the leadership abilities, but I wouldn't necessarily call him or Rossi high-end talent. And then you've got Buium, who there's some question in my mind about what ceiling he reaches. And then the first-round pick that they got is going to be a late first-round pick. So I think that if you break the trade down, it's not quite as like overwhelming as some people might think. But the bottom line is Buium's a really good prospect. It's going to be fun to watch the Wild. I mean, Hughes was all over the place in his first game for them. He scored a goal. It was a great pass from Ryan Hartman, picked up Hughes coming in late, and he scored. But man, that power play is going to be deadly. And even strength, he's such a monster. You put him out there with Kaprizov, and you're going to have to throw another puck out there so the other team can play with the puck sometimes. So you've got him, Kaprizov, and Boldy out there. It's going to be like when Colorado's got McKinnon and Makar out there. I mean, it's just they're just going to dominate even strength play when they're out there. So it's going to be exciting to watch. The Flyers, if they were going to match a package like that, they would have had to have moved Martone or Mishkov. Like, I think both of those guys are better prospects than Zeev Buium. But if you look at those 2 guys up here and maybe like Buium here, the Flyers don't have anyone in that range, right? So their other guys are well below Buium other than Martone and Mishkov. And I don't think there was any way they were going to trade either of those guys for Quinn Hughes. So I don't think that they were willing. They could have matched the offer if they traded one of those guys, but I don't think that they were going. But it sounds like the Canucks wanted both a center and a high ceiling defenseman. So the Flyers don't really have that center, and they probably would have moved a guy like Cam York or Jamie Drysdale, but neither of those guys at this point in their career probably have the ceiling that other people think of when they think of Zeev Buium. So that's kind of like how I would break it down.
All right, Chef, let me go to you, and then we'll get Anthony, and then Anthony we'll get you rolling there.
Yeah, well, everything that I had heard and read out there was the Flyers didn't have that center. They didn't have what was needed. Let's just say, and you can't just keep throwing players. All right, we have a good player, and apparently it's like it would have been counterproductive to give away Martone or Mitchkoff as part of that deal, even if you were getting him back. And I think, well, in particular with this fan base, would have burned this town down if he didn't sign in a year and a half. So I think that was one. And also too, there was a lot of talk about Jersey too, about where he wanted to go. And apparently there was, from what I've read and seen, that there were a couple of players that wouldn't waive their non-trade clause, obviously, to get out, to make room, for Hughes to come in. And I can't blame somebody if you have a no trade clause and you're pretty in striking distance with Jersey. Why would you want to go to somewhere else? Oh, let me waive my clause just so some three brothers can play hockey together. They probably did that their whole life growing up, so it was not a big deal to me. I just didn't see this as the Flyers having enough capital or stuff to get it done. I mean, I threw out what I thought it would take, and in retrospect, looking at what the haul was, it was still short, in my opinion. But they did what they could. They kicked the tires on it when the requesting price was Mitchkoff and Martone, and I think that was when it was a hard pass.
Gotcha. Anthony, what was your impression, and what do you think of some of the players involved?
Well, my initial thought was I was a little surprised about the package that the Wild gave up, because I was thinking, this is a guy that doesn't want to be anywhere but to the Devils. But then, as I was thinking about it, the Quinn Hughes is probably a top 5 player in this entire league. What are you going to have to give up for a guy when you sign him to an RFA? And it's like 4 first-round picks. So I do feel like Boehm is one of the best defensive prospects, but he's a -9 on one of the best top 5 team in the entire league. Marco Rossi had 60 points last year, but he's not projected to get to that number again. He's projected to have 45, 46 points this year. And then his role could continue to decrease. They don't really understand if he's going to be one of those playoff guys. They didn't really want to re-sign him to that big of a deal. And then obviously he played well, got 60 points. And then, he got this, he signed, and then they got the first round pick, which I think that you needed to get at least a first round pick and maybe a second or a third on top. I do believe that from a player perspective or from player value chart, I think it was a good value that the Canucks got that much when they didn't really have a lot of leverage. But then you opened it up to all teams, where the Devils, weren't going to pay as much as they needed to. And I didn't know about the no trade clauses, and that's kind of really interesting. But if Quinn Hughes re-signs here, that this is a perfect fit. If they had question marks about Zeev going into it, and he only had 3 points in his last 15 games for the Canucks, or 4 points, or his last 15 games for the Wild, and they're a win now team. They just signed Kaprizov to that huge deal. They do still probably need another center there, but at the same time, you can't get a Quinn Hughes often. So when you do, you have to just jump on it. And maybe, there's some connections there with Quinn Hughes and the Wild. So I feel like there could be a chance where he does re-sign. And if that's the case, then this is an absolute incredible trade. It's just a lot to give up, but at the same time, you see the impact that Quinn Hughes can do when he actually wants to play hockey, and he has that rejuvenated energy, because he was a superstar when he was very sad that the Canucks were not winning. He was giving everything. And now you go to a top team, and he's probably this is the best. So we have no idea if he's going to re-sign. I mean, Kawhi Leonard got traded to the Raptors, and in his first year, he won the championship, and then he left into the Clippers, and he probably regrets that because they haven't really done anything. So you've seen time and time again where these great teams are trading for players, and like you said previously, they could probably get 75% of a Quinn Hughes trade if they if they trade him again. So this is a great trade in my opinion for the Canucks after rethinking, and the Wild even more so. So I think it's a win-win for both teams. I saw people wanting another first-round pick, but you get a guy that was drafted 9th overall, Zeev Boyum, who fell in the draft that should have been drafted in the top 10, and then you get a first-round pick. That's basically 3 first-round picks of value, and then you get Liam Olgren, who is a pretty okay player, like definitely an NHL player. So I feel like it's a good trade for both parties, and the Vancouver Canucks can just go all out for a top 3 pick now, and just kind of they still have some players they can flip. If they flip Marco Rossi, I would not be surprised either. I was talking to Marco D'Amico, and he said they're not going to do that. But, if they do end up trading him in like a year or two or whatever it is, you can get another first round pick plus. So I like the deal for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely see that. I think for the Flyers, it wasn't that moment where the Flyers are even really assured of being a playoff team. Yeah, they get Quinn Hughes. That makes them a playoff team. But that's the kind of move you make when you want to go from being a playoff team to be a cup contender. And from the Wild vantage point, they see Colorado, right? And they, they see Dallas. And they just don't have that defenseman. And they had other things. I still think, the Wild will probably trade for a center that's out there to augment. Was Eriksson Ek is their top guy in Minnesota. So but still, I mean, the way Wallstat is playing and the rest of that roster, you add Quinn Hughes into that, and you got a definite Stanley Cup contender. The Flyers weren't in that kind of position at all. So it wasn't like, Dallas way back in the day traded Jerome McGinley so they could get Joe Nieuwendyk. And that pushed them over the top. Of course, McGinley turned out to be a Hall of Fame player, just like the Flyers trading for Pronger when they did, because they'd already been to the Eastern Conference Finals. It was the Flyers are a really good team. They're not that right now. I don't know if I agree with Chef that it would have taken Martone and Michkov, but definitely would have taken one of them, I think, for sure, in combination with Lachenko and all that. I just don't think it was there. So anyway, that's the way I look at it. So if anybody has, go ahead.
I did ask Zeev Boyum who his player comp was and who he modeled his game after during the offseason, and he did say Quinn Hughes. So like I've reposted it and it got some traction. Like Bleacher Report picked it up and stuff because it was just really interesting that Quinn Hughes got drafted by his idol or got traded for his idol. So that's interesting if he becomes a Quinn Hughes, which I don't think anyone's really thinking that, because Quinn Hughes had 92 points a couple of years ago, and he's just an automatic superstar added into your lineup, and he's a joystick out there. When you watch Quinn Hughes, his edge work looks like Duncan Keith on 99 speed. He's just one of those guys that is just incredible. If you get that guy, that's like a Jokic. I don't see how you don't give him anything you want in a contract. I would give him the entire world, but also the Wild just made Kirill Kaprizov the highest paid forward. So how are you going to do both? But I don't care what it takes. If I was the Devils, I would have traded anyone other than any of the Hughes brothers, because you had a shot at it to lock this guy up for the next 10 years and lock all of them up without anyone being disgruntled, because they're not going to leave because they're all family. So it would have just been, you give anything you can to get this guy, and that's what the Wild did. So they're probably a Stanley Cup final favorite right now. And all it took was Quinn Hughes. So, or Zeev Boyum, Marco Rossi in a first. So it was a great trade for both teams, but I think the Wild are a lot better now.
Yeah. I think supposedly they were offering, what was it, Dawson Mercer and Simone Nimish from New Jersey as part of a package. Is that better than Boyum and Rossi? I don't know. But it's a moot point, because New Jersey, like Shep was saying, was trying to clear cap space, and they couldn't do it because some of the players turned down with no trade or no move clause or something like that. So I've
And
never
it's
really got
interesting too. If it's interesting that theory, because if you look down that roster, everybody's got like the no movement clause are some well-known names, and I was like, wow, I definitely would not be. A couple of them are veterans, and in my later years, I worked my ass off to make sure I had a no trade, no movement clause or no trade clause. I don't think I'd waive it to go to Vancouver on a rebuild.
That's a good point.
Isaiah, does Chef have a no movement clause on the show, or does we want to ship him off to Snow the goalie? Does he have a right to waive, or what's the deal?
I can block that.
Yeah, you can block that.
Yeah.
I can't say I blame him, but no, we love Russ and we love Anthony, and of course we love Bundy. So anyway, Anthony, the prospect Don, where can people find your work, and what you got going on that you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on again. Love talking to you guys. Love seeing the Christmas hat by Dan and the festivities that Chef's got going on. But the Prospect Dawn at YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X over there. And Draft Prospects Hockey is my company, and we are like one of the leading digital scouting services. So we get a lot of the interviews. We're working with like the USHL to provide a lot more content, just talking about a lot of these draft eligibles and also players that did get drafted. So, last year we had Porter Martone. This year we have like so many of the 2026 NHL draft picks that are coming in, like Ivar Stenberg is dropping, even some 2027 guys like Landon DuPont. So it's a really cool website too. And we have a mock draft simulator that I'm constantly working on and coding and, just updating it. So I just re-updated it like before I got on for the new standings. And then we have creator rankings where it's like we partner with like guys like Steven Ellis, Nathan Grav, NHL Draft Pros, a lot of these places to put their rankings on, so you can see the rankings simultaneously with whatever you're doing. If you want to see like what Gabe Foley has or I have or blue chip prospects. So a lot of these like big YouTubers or big scouts in the industry. So it's a good time over there. But I do have back surgery on Wednesday, so I had a couple shows today just so that I can put out like just talk World Juniors while I'm bedridden for like a week or plus or something like that. So check me out over there if you guys want, but I might not be as active on X for the next couple days.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah,
good luck with that. And
Thank you.
what is that website again? People want to check that out, that information you were talking about?
Yeah, draftprospectshockey.com.
Draftprospectshockey.com.
About 4 months ago, I acquired the company, and we've just been, it was a company that started in 2019, scouting service. We have like 95 contributors, scouts, digital content creators around the world. So it's been a good time for sure.
Excellent. Draftprospectshockey.com. You got to check that out. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And of course, good luck with your procedure. We'll be thinking about you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony.
You take care.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Wow, that's I did not know that he had that site. And of course, we all wish Anthony the best. I had a fusion procedure on my neck, and people don't need to hear my war story, but it can be scary. Anything with spine. That's certainly the case. So, Chef, why don't you, before we move on here, why don't you remind the people why they need to call Summit Adjusters, residents of PA, New Jersey, and Delaware, instead of calling their insurance company if they have property damage?
Wow, yeah, definitely. We're seeing a lot of it right now. You got the cold here, and if you didn't know, what a public adjuster is, it's somebody that represents you against your insurance company to get you a higher settlement and get your house back in order. The thing with the Summit guys, they're the best. The reason to hire them is not necessarily because they're the best, which they are. It's because any wrong word could get you denied in your claim. And sometimes it's maybe not even worth a claim. And they'll be honest with you about it. They'll give you the best path to get your house back in order, whether it be from, roof damage from wind or trees or snow, or if it's a frozen pipe, Example being State Farm doesn't cover plumbing access. A lot of people don't know that. So they put a claim in and it's not covered. And now your insurance company knows you have damage to your home. And if you don't fix it in a timely manner, then they can drop you. Silly, stupid little things like that going into a claim. It's best to have representation because they have their adjusters come out to protect their interests and keep their money. You should have somebody on your side fighting for you. So call Summit Adjusters at 215-752-0560.
You got it. And just a reminder that Jim Southstreet has been for 40 years giving you the finest cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. You got to check them out. Down on 400 South Street. You live down there. You can't make it over. Use Uber Eats, DoorDash, whatever it takes to get that delicious food right to your door. And if you're down there, check them out. Jim Southstreet, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. And thanks for hanging with us through this little ad read. And Dan, the great Dan Silver, what was your opinion when you heard Edmonton makes this desperation trade of Stuart Skinner and Brett Kulak for Tristan Jarry in an effort to just change their circumstances, even though if you look at both players, these are very comparable goaltenders, except Tristan Jarry hasn't even been to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, it was a baffling trade. I mean, Edmonton should have been out there like really trying to upgrade their goalie position if that was their goal, right? And there were some options in the offseason. Like, I just feel like they're not very creative with what they do. I mean, Artur Shilovs, like just from having that guy on my fantasy hockey team for a few years as he was coming up, like I knew that he had more potential than he had shown at times in Vancouver. And he was pretty good sometimes in Vancouver. He had a good playoff run in Vancouver. Like they could have gone after him in the offseason. Like there are other goalies. There were other goalies out there that they could have looked at. Maybe they see something in Tristan Jarry that a lot of people don't see, but just a strange trade. Like it feels like they're back to square one and they're going to be having to find another goalie because I can't imagine that Jarry is the answer for them in net. So it's just a strange move. They also probably stuck with Stuart Skinner a little too long also, like just convinced that they could turn him into something that he's not.
Yeah. Ironically, doesn't he? He's the one that makes out best in this whole deal. He goes to Pittsburgh. The expectation is lower. He can maybe blend into maybe not a better defense, but a comparable one. And there's no pressure on him to win a cup this year. Like the last few seasons.
He might get flipped though because Pittsburgh really likes Artur Shilovs, who's been their starter this year, and they've got a young kid named Sergei Murashev, who they really like a lot, who played really well, won a game the other day, I believe. So I don't know if Skinner's going to really stay in Pittsburgh all that long.
Yeah,
that's true. But I'm just saying, at his point of view, he probably just has been happy to get out of there a little bit because it just, just mentally.
Maybe, but you would think that he'd want to be on a team where, he'd have a chance for another cup run. I don't know. I mean, he should be disappointed in what's happened in Edmonton the last number of years. I don't think the bottom line is he's that great of a goalie, and they've tried to convince themselves that he is. So.
Agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's had, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Sam Ersson. And he's going to be a free agent after this year, talking about Stuart Skinner. But, yeah, sometimes he can look really good. And I'd say he's more accomplished than Sam because I don't think Sam could have backstopped even the Edmonton Oilers to a Stanley Cup final. But, he had the starter's job at his grasp and he lost it. So yeah, I agree with Dan. They stuck too long with him. So, okay, let's not beat around the bush. I look, the Flyers, like I said, they went 1-0-3. They lost 3 games for the first time. It was interesting because when they beat the Sharks way back in the first game since after our last show. They had the league best 9-1-2 record after a loss. Then they lose in overtime versus the Golden Knights, who they played really shift for shift, very even, very well played game. And of course, the TK with that ridiculous turnover, and Vladar was fantastic. So, and then you have the home versus Carolina. Urson played up to the goals expected, played fine. Vladar last night in the Sunday game, I say the Flyers won the first period of game 1 versus Carolina, and they won the last period in game 2. In between the 4 periods, Carolina was really dominant. So, Trevor Zegras, I mean, Chef, where would we be without Trevor Zegras this year? I don't even want to know. I mean, he's this year's like Michkov in terms of that guy we look to for offense.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'd probably be in sweepstakes for McKenna right now. We'd probably be in really good shape to have a chance to draft him. But, all things said, there's good and bad in all this. Good is even when they were outmatched, won the goalie, and they kept everything a lot to the outside. So Tockett's system in that respect is working. So they weren't ever out of any of those games that they tied it and lost in overtime. So I wasn't really necessarily – I was disappointed because if you look, there was a chance, and you said you saw the last 2 again, right, the Hurricane ones? There was a chance for the Flyers to win them in both games, and even the Vegas game they should have won. I mean, even it came down to – the silly mistakes and, a whiff on TK. And that's what puts, the setup for Stone to goal. And then you had a couple other misplays by Flyers in against Carolina. And then when you get to that, the shootouts, unfortunately, the guy who might be feeling, we praise his, Zegras as much as we do, because he's been phenomenal this year. And he's been like, he's like the shootout king. And here, 2 in a row. And so all he needs to do is score. And it's a different result, I think, for the shootout. So, I mean, Dan, I don't know what you think. I mean, I know I want to hear your thoughts on it since you've been away a while.
Well, the Carolina games, they're just a really good team. I mean, I think Carolina is probably the most impressive team I've seen in the East. The way they control the puck, they've kind of changed their D core around a little bit, where I know they've got some injuries, but like Nikishin, the kid who came over from Russia, I mean, he was the best goalie in the KHL for a few years. And I mean, he is big, strong, he can skate, like he's a horse. And I always loved Shane Gostisbehere when he was on the Flyers. I didn't understand trading him. He still makes some boneheaded plays, but he's developed into like a pretty damn good NHL defenseman, in my opinion. And then you've got Keandre Miller, who they got from the Rangers in the Morrow trade, and he looked really good. They've got some horses on defense now, and then they just control the puck up front with Aho and Jarvis and Svechnikov and Nikolai Ehlers and Logan Stankoven. Like, they're just a really good team. So I'm not surprised that they kind of dominated the Flyers. I mean, one of the storylines that is Sean Couturier looks so hapless out there. Like, the decisions that he makes are perplexing. It feels to me like, him and Konechny, we've sort of moved into this realm of like where they're the new Voracek and Giroux, these veterans who, like, half the time I don't know what they're doing out there. None of them are obviously Claude Giroux, and I think Konechny will probably be pretty good the rest of the way. But Couturier, I mean, from passing on the breakaway that he had before, and then he made some decisions last night and the night before with passes that were just like, what is this guy doing? I don't know. I don't know. It's frustrating. And like Isaiah said, without Zegras, I do not know where this team would be. It would not be without Zegras. How about this? Without Zegras and Vladar, like,
Yeah.
Without those two guys, this team would be, like Chef said, they would be right up there in the Keaton Verhoff or Gavin McKenna or Ivar Stenmark discussions.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. And that's been a trend. I mean, I think Couturier is worn down mentally and physically because the Flyers can't give him the kind of help, and he's just taking on too many minutes. When they signed that contract, I think we were unanimous. He had so many hard miles on his career already, that it was just, I don't know. So I think he needs the Olympic break as much as anybody. The other guy that needs the Olympic break is Matvei Michkov, and I got to talk about him.
Absolutely.
I think Jason Martinez, Chef, was talking about this on his show, and I have to agree. I think between fantasy sports, gambling, video games, and things like that, there's been a fundamental change in the way that fans look at the game. Instead of looking just at their team, they kind of focus on a player, and they see the team and the game through the prism of what's best for the player in that moment, as opposed to, I want the Flyers to win, and this is the guy, and this is how you're going to do it. But you can't force feed a guy who came in Michkov, who came in out of shape. No one's even arguing why or whatever. And I think that between that and the fact that the league has a book on what his tendencies were. So now he's a half step slower, at least. They kind of know what he likes to do. And he's been chasing it and fighting it. And I think he needs some conditioning time. And the reason why he's not getting the time is you look at his shifts are so short. I think he's running out of gas. I think he really, really came in out of shape. And the league is better and faster just a little bit every year. And if you fall behind, even if you're a 21-year-old kid, it can really be tough. And that speaks to the kind of offseason he has to have in the summer. And hopefully after the Olympic break, he'll look a little bit better. What say you, Chef?
Okay, so let's unpack a couple things. So what Tocchet said, at least the one thing he does well is he knows when to come off. Well, of course he knows when to come off because he's out of gas. He doesn't overstay his shift, so that's fine. He's always seems to be the first one off if possible. But what other people don't like, and I also, since you mentioned Jason on his show, that he compared him Kucherov in the same years and all that, and it's comparable minutes. It's about the same minutes, and if you look at his minutes for last year's minutes, it's only about 2 minutes off from last year, and a lot of that came at the end of the season after Torch was gone, and they were just playing freewheeling whatever fun, like, hey, go score whenever you can. Brad, Brad, he knew he wasn't coming back, so just give it all out and see what you got to do. But the people out there that are complaining about his minutes need to understand a couple things. Too. One, he doesn't play other than penalty power play. He doesn't play penalty kill, and that's going to hurt him 3-4 minutes a game. So that's 3 or 4 shifts a game that he's probably not getting just because he doesn't kill penalties. Now keep in mind that
he's taking a lot of penalties too.
Well, I was getting to that. Yeah, the Flyers are taking a lot of penalties too. So what happens if you're not killing the penalties? You're sitting on the bench because you're not getting into the game because you don't have that. There's no option for you to go out on the ice. So that's another 3 or 4 shifts a game. It seems like anymore. So for the people that are complaining, he's taking the penalties. Why? Because he's not in shape, and it's always clutching. He's had a couple of stupid high sticking penalties where he's not mindful of his stick. 2 of them. Right. But the real thing is he's holding, he's clutching, he's grabbing, he's getting, he's tripping. He's doing things because his player that he's supposed to be covering is getting away from him because he can't keep up. Now, people say play him more. You can't do that. You'll play him more and he'll get in shape. That's not how you get in shape. You basically don't train in season, but now that you have this huge opportunity, almost 3 weeks off, to get your ass in gear here, and he can pretty much jump on a bike and get some cardio and build up his endurance here, because that's what he's going to need for the second half. And his point production is down, but more importantly, he is taking a lot of bad penalties and all that. But as of right now, he's a -3. At the time last year, I realized it's a whole bunch of more games left, but we'll see. He was -19 last year for the season. So if we can get him to be lower in the plus minus area, then I'd be happy with that. As long as he gets himself back into shape, I think he can do that. So the people that you got to look at it. And then, of course, we're probably going to talk about this and I'll as well. You can't compare him to TK or Coots. You can't say the discipline doesn't go. It's not unilateral. You hold them accountable, but you hold them accountable in their own way. You can't just sit Coots or TK or whatever. And he might not be getting a shift here or there, but we don't know. And nobody knows except for Tockett, whether it's because he screwed up something or because he's gassed on the bench. So, but I'll surrender now because I think I've bloviated enough about the situation.
And you're entitled to that. Dan, what are your thoughts on that and the struggling power play of the Philadelphia Flyers?
Yeah, Michkov's an interesting case. I mean, I don't think his line mates are helping him that much. He was just playing with Sean Couturier and Owen Tippett. Now, their advanced metrics have actually been very good recently.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you watch him, and he clearly needs to get a little bit faster. We've talked about this. He needs to go to the Bobby Brink school of skating improvement, because Brink kind of looked the same way, and then Brink really improved his speed, right? So if Michkov sticks around here in the offseason and works on his foot speed and his skating speed in general, that'll be a big step. Isaiah, you made a good point that teams kind of know what he does and they sort of know how to defend him a little bit. So, but if he can get more explosive, it's not going to make that much of a difference, right? Teams know what Connor McDavid's going to do. They can't stop him. Not necessarily comparing the two guys, but that's what separates the great players from the others, is teams know what they're going to do and they can still do it. So I think the foot speed is one thing. I think the line mates are another thing. The conditioning, obviously, and I don't know if it's a lack of conditioning, but also it almost appeared like he tried to put on too much muscle and he sort of lost some of his quickness, agility from doing that. So I think we're going to look back at this season sort of like what Connor Bedard's season was last year, where people were concerned about him, didn't look great at times, and then he went out and he did what he had to do in the offseason, and he came back and he became one of the best players in the league. I don't know if Michkov's going to become one of the best players in the league, but I think that ultimately we're probably going to look at this season as one that isn't going to be his shining moment in the NHL. So I know a lot of people are complaining about the ice time. I sort of get it, but I also see it from the other perspective too, where he's not really deserving of it at that much at this point. And he would probably tell you the same thing, right?
Yeah, so, he's owned it, Dan. He's owned it. He's owned that he's got to be better.
Yeah, he's owned it. And the power play, you asked about the power play, Isaiah. I still don't see consistency from like a unit. They keep trying to change things up, and they had Sanheim on the power play for a while. Like we know at this point in his career, he is not a point man on the power play. But I don't know. I guess Cam York is probably the best option. I think after that, Emil Andre is, but they really don't have that guy. And it's another thing why passing on Ziv Buyum was kind of a mistake. And look, hey, if they had drafted Ziv Buyum, maybe they would have been open to trading him for Quinn Hughes. So, but I don't know, especially with Michkov struggling, the power play is basically like Zegras and whoever is out there. And him and Dvorak have obviously been great together. But the power play is like Zegras and Bobby Brink's been pretty good. And with Forrester out, it's kind of a mess. So not a great power play. I would try and come up with a unit and stick with it.
I would like to add a build off of something Dan said. The Bobby Brink School of Skating. I mean, I think he might be on something there. Get him away from Couturier and what do you call it? Tippett. I wouldn't mind seeing him on a line with Brink and Cates and see what he could do with somebody. I've long preached that I think he should that Noah Cates would be good for Mitchkoff on a line as a line mate. But given the recent play of Bobby Brink, I mean, he seems to be all over the place. He seems to be up on his skates, getting the puck, and that line is missing. Like, we're missing Forrester big time. And I think that it would be good to see if they can get some chemistry with him and get Mitchkoff going, get his confidence back. I really do think. It's just me snowballing there.
Yeah, you know why I'm saying? Because Mitchkoff right now is getting like 66% of the time offensive zone starts. So that kind of would seem to take Cates out of the equation. You know,
I understand. I'm just telling you what. I'm just telling you, you know, you need to try something, because are you going to break up the Dvorak? No, probably not. They're playing awesome together. You don't mess with that.
Well,
and then you can't go the other way.
I mean, if you put Michkov on with Dvorak and Zegras, I mean, I'd try it, especially if they need a goal. But you know, they're going to defer to Konechny if Konechny's on a run. I'll give Konechny with making just some of the worst decisions with the puck. The 2 Carolina games, those are games where you would think, okay, Konechny's going to make a ton of mistakes. It's going to be a horror show. He actually cleaned up his act a little bit, maybe because he knew he was playing Carolina and he had no choice. But TK did play a lot better in terms of puck management decisions. Other than that, the puck management in yesterday's game was the worst I'd seen all year. And that's what Carolina does to you.
Yeah, the real sinner. The real sinner in the game yesterday.
It was Nitro. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the real sinner in the game yesterday was Tippett. He it's like, by my count, I don't know what the actual numbers are. It's 6 giveaways, 2 were unforced, 2 he got the puck taken away from him in the defensive zone. So while they were trying to clear, so he was one that all of a sudden he's fallen off dramatically, worse than anybody else I've seen on the team.
You're talking about just in terms of his puck management decisions on the ice and things like that. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to wrap this on the main topic that is left for this week, and I put out there on the account that I don't see how they're going to get the top line center and a top line defenseman in the current environment, and it's not panicking, but to feel a little discouraged when you see that the Flyers really weren't ready to get a top 5 to 7 player in Quinn Hughes. But it's like, how is it going to happen? How many opportunities like this are going to present themselves, knowing that free agency is probably not going to be the avenue with the way the cap is going up? So, Dan, I mean, that is the burning question that comes out of this week for me. Maybe you feel differently, but that, to me, I think that's what's resonating with the fans. Like, okay, how are we going to get out of this? It's going to be a slow, steady climb. And before at fair or unfair, before you know it, people are going to say, well, gee, you know, this feels a lot like Hextall, a more intelligent Hextall and a more fan-friendly Hextall, but ultimately very similar.
You know, to look at it on the bright side, here's 2 things that I think to myself. There were also 2 things that the Flyers needed to do, and you know, they still need to keep working on these things, but one of them was to amass more elite talent on the team, and the other one was to really improve the goaltending. Well, not giving up much, Danny Briere managed to do something that looks like it might have fixed the goaltending for now, Dan Vladar, and he did something for not giving up very much that looked like he brought in some elite talent in Trevor Zegras. So I think that Briere has shown the ability to do things creatively that we don't necessarily see coming that help solve issues with the team. So I agree that I don't think there's any kind of like magic solution that they have in place to get a 1C or to get a top pairing defenseman. But I kind of feel like you can sort of rest comfortably in knowing that Briere's the guy who's out there looking for it. However, I also think that they're almost starting to turn the narrative a little bit in that they're, you know, how much they love Porter Martone, where they're almost, and you talk to Anthony DeMarco, he will talk about this sometimes, that maybe they don't need a true 1C. Maybe they don't need a true number one D man. I think he would almost say that they need the number one D man more than the 1C,
Yes.
because if you have wingers like Porter Martone, Matvei Mishkov, Tyson Forster, who knows what other wingers will develop big time, Travis Konechny, maybe you can get by with some combination of Zegras, if he's playing center, Zegras, Luchenko, Nesbitt, Jack Berglund. If a center by committee thing where you're basically, you've created a great team atmosphere and you've got these great wingers and you've got decent defensemen, maybe you can sort of get by a little bit. I think that's what they're looking at, because maybe they're starting to realize that, like, man, are we going to be able to find this 1C? So, like I said, you have to kind of have hope, and I look at what he did with Zegras and Vladar, and it gives me a little bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Chef, do you want to add to that?
No, I just think that you're going to have to let it play out. I mean, the cards are what they are. You can't do anything about players re-signing with their teams early. So that window is gone. Nobody expected that. Nobody predicted that everybody was going to re-sign early, and people were going to make trades this early, something this big that caught everybody off guard. I thought it might be right after the new year that things would get real, and I still do. I think that it'll be a little spicy after the new year here, because teams are realizing that the time is closing, and the way the divisions are, and especially in the East, it's all packed together. It's like 8-9 points from first to last, or first to out of it. So I really do think there is there a deal to be made. Of course, there's a deal to be made. There's always a deal to be made, and you might have to give up a Luchenko or somebody, or a Bonk even, or somebody in the minors. And a player on the team to get what you need eventually, but it's good. Danny's got to get creative, and I'm sure there's ways to do it. I mean, look how many they pulled the what, a 1C. How many first round picks did he pull out of his back pocket already since he's been GM? So I have to believe for right now that he's capable of doing it based on what he's done so far. So,
okay. Yeah, I can't really add much to what Dan said. So I think we're going to leave it there. The Flyers did pull a minor league trade. Ethan Sampson, a good offensive, good skating defenseman at a minor league level, goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a big hulking defenseman, Roman Schmidt, kind of like a big, tough defensive guy. I don't know if he really has an NHL upside, but they just felt like Ethan Sampson's not really going to have an NHL future, at least not with the Flyers. So I don't know if that was a move just to help the Phantoms, or maybe they think Roman Schmidt could eventually become a 6-7 guy. I'm not sure, but I did want to mention that. So, Dan, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap it up for tonight?
Nothing in particular, just glad to be back after some travel on the show with you guys. Hopefully it's a fun holiday where the Flyers give us, something to look forward to. Their schedule isn't too difficult here for the next period of time. They've got the Canadiens, the Sabres, the Canucks, the Blackhawks, the Kraken, the Canucks again. So the Flames. I mean, the Flyers, based on the schedule, could really go out there and have a nice finish to this calendar year. So I'm kind of just hoping to see some good hockey over the holidays.
You got it. People can follow you at Bluesky and X at DSilver88.
Correct. That's right.
You got it, Chef.
Yeah. I mean, this is all going to unfold, and they have a chance to make up some ground, like Dan said. They've had 3 ties. At least they got the loser point, in the last couple games here. So that's something kind of to be happy with. It's having them hang around. So that's great. And we'll see what the New Year's going to be. I think after this road trip, the New Year's it's pretty much going to tell you where they're going to be in the hunt starting in the new year. So, but hey, I know I nobody likes to argue about stuff more than me. And you can find me and I changed my little thing here if you're watching, Chef to the left B on X. Chef to the left B on X. Just the way it's spelled right there. So if you want to argue with me about it, hit me up there.
You got to put the @ on there, so people might get confused. But yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. Okay, so the Flyers play tomorrow night in Montreal, at Buffalo on Thursday against the Rangers, and it looks like a matinee on Saturday. And then we are back on Monday. We're going to have a rare show next Monday, which is a game day. And sorry for that, but we have a pretty good guest we feel good about. And so we'll take it from there. So if you could follow the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck, at Bluesky or X. Also, we're on GETTR at O&B Puckcast. You can follow the O&B Puckcast on several podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Audible. Of course, we're on YouTube and Facebook. Just type in O&B Puckcast. It'll pop right up for you. So if you could follow or subscribe, whatever applies to your platform, we do appreciate it. It helps move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. So that is all we have for you tonight. We didn't get to our commenters. Sorry about that. We will keep that in mind for next time and do a better job with that. And hopefully we'll keep tabs on that. Anyway, have a good night, and everybody take care.